For 30 years, the world stared at the Tonight Show guest chair and saw nothing but polished smiles, graceful laughter, and perfectly lit halos. Night after night, America believed it was watching angels. But in 2005, as time finally slowed him down, Johnny Carson decided to open a door he had kept locked his entire career. With tired eyes that had seen too much, Johnny quietly admitted, "The cameras only showed the public image. I was the one who saw the storms behind the smiles, and the reckless freedom behind the glamour." What would you think if you knew that one of Hollywood's most elegant women casually sat across from Johnny wearing no underwear at all? Or that a legendary beauty treated husbands the way others treated outfits, changing them often, without apology, while flirting openly in front of millions? As his final chapter approached, Johnny no longer wanted to protect those illusions. "I covered for them my whole life," he confessed. "But the truth doesn't deserve to die with me." And so, the velvet curtain finally lifted. These are 6 women, 6 lives, and 6 very different faces of promiscuity, seen through the honest, amused, and sometimes sorrowful eyes of the king of late-night television. Chapter 1. Zsa Zsa Gabor, the Queen of Husbands and Fearless Desire. In early 2005, sunlight poured into Johnny Carson's Malibu home as he gazed out at the ocean, a sly smile still playing on his lips. His body had weakened, but his memories had not. 30 years on television meant 30 years of watching Hollywood perform without scripts once the cameras stopped rolling. When the word promiscuous crossed his mind, one name surfaced instantly: Zsa Zsa Gabor. Zsa Zsa wasn't merely an actress. She was a spectacle. A living declaration that rules were optional. While other women worried about reputation, Zsa Zsa changed husbands as effortlessly as she changed couture. 9 husbands, a number Johnny loved to tease her about on air. Each time she appeared, the studio temperature seemed to rise. Not only because of her beauty, but because of her fearless attitude toward life. Zsa Zsa never denied loving men, or their money. She once laughed on Johnny's show, "I'm a wonderful housekeeper. Every time I leave a man, I keep the house." The audience roared. Johnny saw something deeper. She wasn't embarrassed by labels. She owned them. She flirted with everyone, especially Johnny, calling him darling in that unmistakable Hungarian accent, holding his hand, leaning close to whisper playful remarks while the cameras rolled. Even Johnny admitted that her boldness occasionally made him blush. Off camera, her energy was even stronger. She rarely appeared alone and never with the same companion twice for long. Fidelity, to her, was optional. Once backstage, she casually showed Johnny a handwritten list of wealthy admirers she'd collected during a European trip, discussed as casually as shopping. She wore daring dresses that made NBC technicians nervous, laughed at the risk, crossed her legs, and spoke freely about her love life. She treated The Tonight Show like her own living room. Johnny didn't judge her. He saw her as a force of nature, unapologetic, unstoppable, and entirely self-owned. With Zsa Zsa, Johnny joked, you never knew who the next husband would be. But you knew one thing, he'd be very rich. She wasn't discreet. She wasn't modest. But she was honest. And in Johnny's eyes, Hollywood would have been far duller without women brave enough to live that openly. Chapter 2. Tallulah Bankhead, the no-underwear legend. When Johnny thought back to the late 1960s, he couldn't help but chuckle. One voice echoed louder than the rest, raspy, bold, and unmistakable. If anyone lived as if rules didn't exist, Johnny said, it was Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah was famous not just for her talent, but for her complete disregard for convention. There was an old saying in Hollywood, if you want the truth, ask Tallulah. And sometimes, the truth came unclothed. She was known for never wearing underwear, anywhere. Parties, performances, or television. When she arrived at The Tonight Show, the NBC crew panicked. Camera angles were checked obsessively. One mistake could have meant disaster. Tallulah, meanwhile, smoked calmly and laughed at everyone's nerves. Her promiscuity wasn't calculated. It was instinctual. She spoke openly about heavy drinking, all-night parties, and relationships with both men and women, taboo subjects in her era. Once backstage, she told Johnny, "My father warned me about men and booze. He forgot to warn me about women and cocaine." Johnny was stunned and impressed by her fearless honesty. On air, she led conversations into forbidden territory. She spoke freely about affairs, excess, and pleasure. Johnny joked that hosting her required no script, only fast reflexes. Yet beneath that rebellion, Johnny sensed deep loneliness. After the lights went out, Tallulah sometimes sat alone, cigarette in hand, eyes heavy with sadness. Her promiscuity wasn't recklessness, it was survival. She lived freely, even if it cost her everything. And Johnny respected her for that. Chapter 3. Shelley Winters, a woman with no secrets. Johnny laughed helplessly whenever he heard the name Shelley Winters. In this town, he said, people fear secrets coming out. Shelley's only secret was that she had none. Two-time Oscar winner, Shelley was famous for her brutal honesty. She spoke about her lovers openly, sometimes in shocking detail. Marlon Brando, Sean Connery, Burt Lancaster. Names spilled effortlessly. Johnny often had to steer conversations away from dangerously revealing territory. Once, she began describing a lover's bedroom habits on national television. Johnny interrupted. "Shelley, we are not in your bedroom." She laughed and kept talking. Her promiscuity wasn't hidden. It was celebrated. She saw men as experiences, not possessions. Backstage, she once dismissed an A-list star by saying, "Handsome, yes. Boring talker. Gone by morning." She remembered everything: names, habits, insecurities. Hollywood shrank around her stories. Yet Johnny knew she wasn't heartless. She wanted love, but on her own terms. Her openness was power, and she wielded it without apology. Chapter 4. Elizabeth Taylor, Love Without Breaks. Johnny once joked that Elizabeth Taylor's wedding announcements gave him comedy material for weeks. 8 marriages. But behind the jokes was something far more intense. Elizabeth Taylor didn't date. She loved with total abandon. She followed desire without hesitation, even when the world disapproved. Her affair with Richard Burton shook Hollywood. Even the Vatican condemned her. Liz remained radiant and unapologetic. On Johnny's show, she spoke proudly, diamonds flashing, passion unmistakable. She never loved quietly. Her romances were public, explosive, and consuming. Once, she teased Johnny, "At least I marry everyone I sleep with." Johnny froze, then laughed. Her promiscuity wasn't scandal, it was devotion to feeling. She loved as if every moment mattered. Yet Johnny saw the loneliness beneath it all. She was always searching for a place to rest her heart. Chapter 5. Angie Dickinson, Power Wrapped in Elegance. When Johnny mentioned Angie Dickinson, his voice softened. She didn't shock. She didn't confess. She dominated quietly. Her intelligence, beauty, and confidence filled the room. She flirted subtly, leaving the audience breathless without saying a word too much. She moved among powerful men, from Frank Sinatra to whispers of the White House, never confirming, never denying. Her promiscuity wasn't loud. It was controlled. She chose, not waited. And that made her dangerous. Johnny admired her mastery. She never lost control. Mystery was her greatest weapon. Chapter 6. Marilyn Monroe, The Lost Angel. As the sun disappeared, Johnny fell silent. If there was ever a woman promiscuous because she feared being alone, he said softly, it was Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn wasn't calculating. She was searching. Her relationships were many, intense, and fleeting. She gave herself completely, hoping love would quiet her loneliness. Johnny saw a child behind the icon. A woman who needed reassurance, who sought comfort wherever she could find it. Her promiscuity was a cry for love. And Hollywood failed her. She made the world feel desired, Johnny said, but saved none of that love for herself. Night settled over Malibu. 6 women. 6 lives. 6 reflections of desire, freedom, pain, and honesty. Johnny Carson closed the book at last. "These stars," he whispered, "will shine forever, with both their halos and their shadows." That is Hollywood.